Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom and welcome back. So we have a short amount of time together this afternoon just to hear one more time from Rabbi Tamar, and in this more intimate group also hopefully to be a little bit in dialogue with Rabbi Tamar. And so what I want to invite us to do is now take what you have heard today, this beautiful drasha, take what you heard yesterday, last night, and open your heart for a few minutes to talk about shalom, to talk about peace, and what it means to cry out for peace from the depths of our anguish and our heartache. I learned from a psychologist a couple of months into this terrible war that when we lack safety, it is very hard to find empathy. That if we feel endangered or we feel our loved ones are endangered, it is almost impossible to feel empathy toward anyone else, especially not toward the people who are in any way neighbors of or associated with the people who are hurting us or threatening us. So, thank you. And so, yet, as I mentioned last night, it is not from the diaspora, but straight from the heart of Yerushalayim, from the people whose loved ones have been killed, from the people who are running into shelters in the middle of the night, where a beautiful and unlikely partnership and friendship emerged between Rabbi Tamar and one of her dear friends who's a sheikha, where Rabbi Tamar and this sheikha and others, Israeli Jews and Palestinian citizens of Israel, have found their way into relationship and into partnership and find a way to cry out for peace, even or precisely from the place of that vulnerability, of that lack of a sense of safety. And that strikes me as nothing short of miraculous. And so we want to take a few minutes together with you this afternoon, and we have about 36 minutes together. We want to take some time and just hear from you about your vision for peace and about what it means to cry out from the depths of our anguish and some of the work that you have been doing that needs to be amplified by those of us who are in the diaspora. Many of you were sitting in this room a couple of months ago when Yonatan Zaygen was here, who's the son of Vivian Silver, great hero and warrior for peace who was murdered on October 7th. And he sat in this chair with Arab Aramin, his now dear friend, brother, who's Palestinian, whose sister was shot by an Israeli sniper and died when she was 10 years old in a horrific, tragic loss. And the two of them said, there's so much violence and so much pain where we are from. We need the diaspora not to amplify those most violent and extreme voices, but instead to amplify our voices. And we take that mandate very seriously here. So we want to hear from you, Rabbi Tamar. Tell us what it looks like from your seat to hold a cry for peace and to sound a cry for peace loud enough that it's heard not only through Jerusalem, but also throughout the world.
Toda Rabba. First, I'm in awe that all of you stayed. So I want to say thank you, and really, Rabbi Sharon, I want to say that I feel so happy just being at your presence and being at the presence of the community you created. You know, many times I think about, it has to do with the conversation yesterday, like there was no reason to create IKAR. It was in your heart. It was in your soul. And you made it happen. And now it exists and it amplifies those voices. So it's so important to have this conversation, and it's so important for me to be here. And just sitting here together, seeing you, seeing David, seeing the whole community, it gives me a lot of strength. I want to say 3 things about peace. The first is something about the 7th of October. I had a plan on the 7th of October. My plan was to start studying. Every year we study a different topic. And my plan was on the 7th of October, in honor of my teacher, Professor Alice Shalvi, who had just died a few days before. She was the Israel Prize winner for religious Jewish feminism in Israel. She was a very big peace leader. And it was just a few days after she passed away in Sukkot. And I had a plan that we would learn Perek HaShalom. It's a long-lost chapter called the Chapter of Peace, written by the ancestors 2,000 years ago. And I was ready. On the 6th of October, we had a beautiful Simchat Torah service. Everyone was dancing. We commemorated Alice Shalvi by creating a last one of the 7 hakafot in her honor and in the honor of peace. Everyone went home. I put the chapter of peace next to my, on the table, and I said, in the morning, I'll take this and we'll start learning the chapter of peace in Shul. And I wake up early in the morning. People are knocking at my door because my phone isn't on. And they say, war started. Everything is about to change. And Yossi and I, my husband and I, leave the girls at home in the safe room. And we run during sirens. And we arrive to Shul. And we see people crying, people sobbing. It was clear that something very, very bad, frightening, terrifying was happening. In fact, there was a huge group of Haredi women, ultra-Orthodox women, whose men had left very early in the morning in order to pray. And they were all left by themselves with tiny children. So we brought them all in, and we sat together, and we sang, and we brought them food. But it was clear that everything is about to change. And Perek HaShalom, the chapter of peace, was put aside. First story. The chapter of peace is put aside. Second story. A few weeks later, I sit, as I did for all these weeks since October 7th, I did Kabbalot Shabbat 12 times every Friday, like God owes me so many Kabbalot Shabbat. And I did lots of Havdalot for people who were survivors from the Otif, and they were displaced all around.
The Otef is the Gaza envelope, those villages and kibbutzim on the border with Gaza.
And they were all around Israel, and I went from one to the other with the students of the rabbinic seminary, and we did Kabbalot Shabbat, and we did Havdalah. And we sat in one of those Havdalot in kibbutz En Gedi. It's a kibbutz just next to the Dead Sea. And we sat with kibbutz Nirim, who are in the Gaza Strip. And they had lost many people, and they had been attacked, and it was very difficult. And after months or weeks of not hearing or not saying the word peace, just putting it aside, until one day it would come up, we sit with the people of the Nirim, of the kibbutz, and suddenly one of them says, one of the people say, I guess I can't say the word God. It's hard for me to say the word God now. I'm just so turned upside down by everything happening. And then someone looks at him and says, God, that's not a problem. What about the word peace? And they all look at each other, and there's silence. And then an amazing, amazing guy called Oren stands up, and he says to them, I'm sorry. All my life, I have been working on peace. And I see that there are people who are evil. And I understand that some of those people I will always have to confront, and I will always need to protect myself and all the people I love. And he said, I'm not only protecting myself and the people I love, I'm protecting the world, I'm protecting humanity. He said, I'm also protecting Islam and Christianity, I'm protecting life. But he said, no one will take the word peace away from me, because that's the person I was. And if I let them take the word peace away from me, I will allow them to do exactly what they wanted to do to me, and to stop my heart, my conscience, my soul, my imagination from believing in peace. And everyone cried. Third story. That night I came back home and I opened the chapter of peace. That chapter was written after the destruction of the temple. Our ancestors saw cruelty. It was cruel. And yet, out of all the things they created, like this guy, Oren, they decided to stay themselves, and they wrote a chapter of peace. And they start that chapter by saying something amazing. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, the world can always be left within war. We can be stuck in war forever. The only change that will come about is if we hold on to peace. And then at the very end of the chapter of peace, those ancestors say, you have to start from within. You have to start with Shlom Bait, peace amongst you. You have to come together and create within the people, within society, slowly in concentric circles. Peace cannot be achieved out there. It has to start from within the families, the communities, and then slowly show people that it's possible, that it's a possible reality. I want to say that the first phone call I received on the 7th of October, on Motzei Shabbat, was from my Muslim friends. And I think my experience is very different from the one you have. I think that in America, the 7th of October very quickly became a huge gap between everyone. We in Israel experience exactly the opposite. The first phone calls I received were from Muslim friends, and they told me how ashamed they are and how terrified they are and how proud they are to be part of a world where everyone just stands up and goes to defend each other. And since then, we have sat so much. And it was clear to them and to me that we cry for every child in Palestine and in Israel. It wasn't even a question. I hear that in America, you can't say that. Like rabbis are afraid of saying that because it's not popular. I want to say that in Zion, in our community, for us, it's very important, because who are we going to be after October 7th if people take away the image of God that we were supposed to be? And I want for that to be thankful to Sheikh Ibtisam and to all the sheikhim, and especially one sheikh. And I want to tell you truthfully the conversation I had with him on the 8th of October. I called him, he called me, and I said to him, I'm afraid of you. And he said, could you tell me what exactly you're afraid of? And I said, I'm afraid that I'm going to discover that you and your community, all you want is for us to disappear. And I need to be able to say this to you so you understand how terrified I am, not only from the outside physically, but from the inside spiritually. And he said, I need you to know that I am your best friend, and I will never, ever let anything bad happen to you, especially not in the name of my God. And I need you to know that you will never, ever allow anything bad to happen to me, especially not in the name of God. This is the conversation that we have, and it's very difficult. It's not easy. When you're terrified, it's true. People are terrified. They have good reason to be terrified. But I think it's more terrifying to think that you will lose the image of God. That will be the worst loss of all. And that's what we're sticking to.
Thank you for sharing these stories. 400 Palestinians were killed in this past week. I think sometimes about the enormity of the loss, and I understand why people aren't looking to empathize with the Jews, because they're in so much pain. And I understand from the Jewish broken heart why it's so hard to empathize with the loss that I just mentioned. It's so painful. It's so painful. We're all broken. And this is why it feels to me so extraordinary that peace is shalom, this notion of wholeness. It's almost like too chutzpahdik to even say, but could we be whole when we're so broken? Like, is such a thing even imaginable? You're right. In America, it's very hard. I mean, there are a few places where we really insist on this language, and in most places, communities are really not wrestling to hold those complicated realities. It's just much easier to choose. It's not just easy. It's just much more natural to choose a side. And what I hear from you and from Sheikha Ibtisam is the side that we choose is the side of life and the side of love. And I hear this consistently from other peace builders. And one of the things that's so striking about it, especially giving your teaching on Yerushalayim, the multiplicity of identities that's part of Jerusalem, the plurality of it, is that I have heard many peace builders be asked if they're lonely. And I'm always struck by the question because I do feel lonely. I think many of us here feel lonely, like we feel like we're on an island. That's the language that a lot of us use. And what the Israeli and Palestinian peace builders always answer is no, because I have 3 or 4 friends who see the world the way I do, right? And so Gadir Khana says no, because I have my couple of people in the world. And I think there's something for us to learn about that, about not needing to have everyone in the world agree with us or see what we see, but forging a path forward because we know that we're not alone, because there are a few other people in the world who hold this perspective and this view. And there's something about writing that prayer, the prayer for the mothers, which hopefully we'll say at the end of this, that's so powerful because the prayer itself is a dialogue. It's written between 2 people. It's sort of saying, this is enough in a way. It's not enough. We need everyone, but this is enough for now. It's enough to make me not pull away from the struggle. And so I wonder if that resonates. I wonder if this idea of like, you said that after, we talked about this even in the couple weeks after October 7th, when I started to share with you some of what was happening here, and you said, oh my God, at least here we feel like we're a part of something together, and there every family is broken apart by this, and let alone every campus, let alone every community. That feeling of finding others who are on a similar path toward peace and finding the strength, I wonder if you can just speak to that and how you find that and how you nurture that. And then we'll share a couple of the texts that you brought to us today.
The truth is I worry a lot, but less about Israel, more about the Western world. I think Israel is in a really hard time, but this is big. This is not about Israel. Like, this is huge. I think on the one hand, individualism became so extreme and people are so lonely. And I remember Micha Goodman saying that the phone became the new newsletter and it's called the Daily Me. You read what you want. You see yourself in the image of yourself. And you don't have to be in contact with those that you can't stand. So you find yourself living in a world that's very much like you, protected, but very unprotected, really. And also in a world that you can really do what you want, Last night we had a conversation about rabbis, as the head of a seminary, and Dr. and Harav Sheri was there, and Neria. And we were talking about the fact that the younger people, there's a huge problem in the world now that young people don't want to be bus drivers or truck drivers. Like young people don't want to do all kinds of things. And you ask yourself, what's going to happen to all these professions and to all these communities who need servers, public servants, who need doctors and surgeons and teachers and drivers. And so the whole Western world, in a way, is becoming really shaped by the motivation of one person. And on the other hand, you look at the other side and you see all kinds of theories of togetherness that are so populist and so fascist and so nationalist in the worst way. And in the middle, you ask yourself, but what's going to happen to just belong to something that gives you place and also gives the together place, but not in a cruel way? So both options right now in our world are very extreme, the way I understand them. And I think it's one of our problems, and it comes way before what we're going through right now. And what we're going through right now finds itself playing in this political, social, world, because people can't stand something that's very complicated, and they say, what is it? Like, fix it on this side. And on the other hand, they say, what do you mean? Fix it by ruining all the other things and just protecting your collective. And in the middle, you're stuck with questions and complexity. And we are the complexity, because our people, and that's one of the beautiful things about Yerushalayim, we are a particular people. We have a collective, but we also are a universal people. Yerushalayim is the most particular and the most universal idea. And it opens up to all individuals and to all people. We have something to give to the world. We have something to give to the world in this moment. And yet the world can't hear us because of all this craziness. And that's why I feel it's so true what you said, like feeling lonely, not being able to amplify our voice doesn't help us, and it doesn't help the world. The world is in such a big problem. And whether it's this or that is not going to be good for the world. We need this. And most of us are this. How do we make the world listen to that? And I think what we understood in Israel, and this is exactly what you said, is you just start by creating a community of different religions who live together. So in Zion, we created a circle called Amen 12 years ago. And this circle is made out of Muslim leaders, Christian leaders, Jewish leaders, and they have been best friends for 12 years. And every time there's a hate crime, we go together and we study regularly. And so they were the first to call each other, and we're not alone. And when the hostages go through everything, they receive phone calls from the circle of Amen, and it changes their feeling. We are trying to cultivate something that is in between and gives different feeling. And our dream really is to create these kinds of networks in Israel, where you have circles like this of Amen and people help each other and work together. It can't be a huge political idea because we can't wait and be shoved and pushed and destroyed by politicians. And it can't be one person doing it because that's an anecdote. It has to be a system that works that way. So we are creating systems. Zion is a system of Jews who for years hated each other. My grandparents said, don't talk to these. The other grandparents said, don't talk to these. And we said, no, we must talk to each other. The rabbinic seminary is rabbis who, after 200 years of hating each other, came together. They told the Orthodox, don't you dare speak with the Reform, don't you dare to speak with those. And now all these rabbis, instead of taking care of themselves, they take care of Am Yisrael. And now the next stage is to create a system of religious leaders. And no one will tell them, don't feel for the children of Gaza. How can you even say that? Because that Muslim person will tell you, I can't sleep at night because I think of the hostages' children. And I can't sleep at night because I can't stop thinking about the children of Gaza. And the rabbi will say it to him, and he will say it to the rabbi, and the community will listen and will say, So this is how religion looks like. So we have to build it. And I want to say, and I know it's hard to say it and it's painful, countries right now, with all the power they have, with all the media and politics and money and power and extremism they are becoming dangerous. We, in communities, we are becoming the remedy. That is why we are so important. So the remedy has to be close and strong, and it has to go righteous and decent and holy and make it all around. There are good people. My family was saved in the Holocaust by righteous Christians. There are good people always. We have to find them and we have to work together.
Amen. Amen. I wonder if anyone has a question that you want to ask of Rabbi Tamar. And then we'll just look at this text before we wrap up today. Jack, just introduce yourself as you offer your question.
I'm Jack Neff. I have a question. Everything I know about Israel comes either through the media or lunch and learn at IKAR. My understanding is the mass protests that are happening regularly in Israel, that they concern the war and the hostages, but among the general Israeli population, the larger demographic, that the full rights for Palestinians or Palestinian not citizens of Israel, occupied, whatever it is, however they class, is there any possibility that those classifications can be taken down and that they'll have the equivalent of like a U.S. Constitution, you know, all people are created equal in Israel?
So first, I really want to thank you that you come not only to the media, but to the Lunch and Learn, because it's so important. I want to say first that so many Israelis are now in protest for such a long time. You know, I didn't go to a movie with my husband on Motzei Shabbat for years now, because in the judicial overhaul, and right after that, from October 7th, we are protesting all the time. All the time. We finish Shabbat services, eat, rest of it, and we go out to protest. And this is what so many Israelis are doing. And by the way, I think it needs to be known that most Israelis, according to all the polls, all they want before anything else right now is for the hostages to come back. And if it means stopping the war, it has to happen now. And they're doing it all around Israel, and it includes all voices of ultra-Orthodox, of Orthodox settlers. It really includes many, many voices. It's not easy, and it's very complicated, but in general, you can say that there's a huge gap between the politicians and between the people. The gap is unbelievable. I also want to say that Israel doesn't have a constitution the way you have in America. But when Ben-Gurion created the declaration of Medinat Israel, of the independence of Medinat Israel, the first thing he wrote there is that in honor of the history of Am Israel, as we come back to the state of Israel and created, we are vouching to create a state that is egalitarian, completely equal, has justice, and gives freedom to every person, no matter what race, color, or whatever it is they are. This was written in 1948. This was written as we were created. And since then, in many, many places, this was the whole notion. Today, we're in a place where the politics do not even acknowledge the Declaration of Independence. And one of the first things that happens in the judicial overhaul is that one of the ministers of the State of Israel, I still cannot believe I saw this in my own eyes, stood in the Supreme Court of Israel and said that this declaration is not valid and it doesn't count. So we are now not fighting one fight. We are fighting for everything. You are in an historic moment where Israelis are misrepresented by their own government, when they are fighting all the time, every day, for the sanctity of life and our hostages, where many of them care. It's not only that they care because emotionally and, they care for the people, which is very important, but they physically see their own children coming back from war. These are the people who pay the prices. These incredible soldiers are the ones who come back with all these injuries. And they see that. This is for their own children who must not be there right now. So all of us are in this thing, and we are fighting for our very essence, who we are. What is the image we are? And this is such a difficult thing because many times when you need to fight something coming from the outside, you need to be very organized within and very connected from the inside. And yet right now, for many Israelis, the government is the biggest disappointment they have. And they are so proud to be Israelis when they look at each other. And I want to give you one example, Jack, so you understand what I'm talking about. I want to speak about a hero, an Israeli hero that we, Neria and I, were fortunate together with our congregation and together with hundreds of Jerusalemites to honor. His name is Yusuf El-Ziyadna. Yusuf El-Ziyadna is a Bedouin who lives down south. And he knows people, young people, from the south. And on the 7th of October, he received a call at 6-something, and he received a phone call from a young man telling him, Yusuf, something really bad is happening. Please come to save us. Now, Yusuf lives in the south. He had no idea what's going on. He did not understand how terrible this was. He didn't even have a question because he knows this Jewish guy. And it was clear to him that if someone needs help, he stands up and goes to help because this is what we do in hospitals every day, in supermarkets every day. We live together every day. And he went to save that guy from Omer, where I was a rabbi many, many years ago in the Negev. And he brings his bus. And this guy, this incredible guy, says, listen, it's crazy. He saw the bullets and he saw everything. And he says, just take as many people as you can. And 30 kids went up from the Nova on his minibus, which has place for 15, and he took 30. And then he said to people, we're not going to go through the streets because that's dangerous. That's where they are. We're going to go through the fields. And any one of you who has a car, come after me. And he took them through the fields. And he saved 100 people. 100 people. And when he came to us in Yerushalayim, hundreds of people. And they were Orthodox and secular and Reform and conservative, men, women, LGBT, dark-skinned, white-skinned. It didn't matter. They were all standing around him, applauding. And I remember he said, what are you applauding for? This is what Jews do. This is what we believe in. This is what we were supposed to do. And everyone said, yes, this is exactly what we were supposed to do. But now we see the most beautiful Israeli example. And this is how we want to live. So the country right now is filled with these examples. But the politics is so far away. And we will have to heal, bring back the hostages, stop this war, take care of the soldiers, of the wounded, see the people going back to their homes, and then heal and have a government that is worthy of the people. And then heal and create all those incredible things that people do together, like Yusuf, and like the Jews, and like the Druze, and like the Cherkesim. We live beyond everything you hear in the media. And that is so terrible, but that is the mission we have to overcome that. And we will.
I want to add something to what you said. Thank you so much for sharing about Yusuf, and thank you for this question, Jack. And this past week, it is now the polls are showing that 75% of Israelis oppose this war, the continuation of this war, and support an immediate ceasefire and the return of the hostages and an end to war. So I think that's really important for us to know. We know what it's like to not be represented by our government here in America, and it's really important to know that most Israelis feel that way. Now, Jack, you ask a slightly different question, though. I just want to pick up on one piece, which is I think what I'm hearing you say is that in these protests for the last couple of years, it's been 2.5 years of protests, they are protesting against protesting for ceasefire, protesting for return of the hostages, and protesting against the judicial overhaul, but not necessarily protesting for equal rights and justice for Palestinians. And I just want to lift that up because you're right. In my experience in these protests, you're right. In fact, I was invited to speak at one of the protests in Petah Tikva before October 7th, and I was told not to mention Palestine, Palestinian, or occupation. And I spoke anyway because what I was told by my friends who are leaders in this space there, who are very much anti-occupation activists, is that there is a coalition that's building right now of people who understand democracy and the centrality of democracy in building a peaceful future. And what we need to do is, some of us have already a vision of what that will look like in its biggest form, and some people are taking first steps toward achievement of that vision. And so what we want to do is have people fall in love again with democracy. And then the next step after that is to say you can't have a democracy when you have millions of people who can't vote in that democracy, right? So what I saw when I was there was that at every protest on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, there was a small anti-occupation block. They were together, and they were people holding Palestinian and Israeli flags, and they were holding end the occupation signs. Then October 7th happened, and those protests were put off for a couple of months, but they started again pretty quickly. And that camp is growing. And so you're right that it's not, in my experience, and you'll tell, I mean, I've seen you, we've been at a lot of these together, but in my experience, you're right, that's not the dominant voice. The dominant voice is not a equal justice for Palestine voice in these protests. But there's a growing number of people who are connecting the dots, who are understanding that this breathless quest for annexation is part of what weakened Israel enough that October 7th was even possible, that you can't actually have democracy and annexation, that you can't have democracy and occupation, that this is a growing understanding among many of the people that I am encountering there. And that's part of the reason why we keep amplifying the voices of the peace builders here, because they are struggling. And I will point out, I don't know if folks read a piece that Susan and I have a friend named Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib, who wrote a piece in The Atlantic this week. If you haven't seen it yet, you really should see it. He's a Palestinian from Gaza. And he was the person who walked through one of the encampments, and he was wearing a T-shirt that said, "From the river to the sea, only peace will set us free." And he said it was like he was speaking a different, like people were like, "What are you talking about? That's not what this fight is for." And he's like, "I'm from there, and I lost 33 of my family members, and that is what this fight is for." And he wrote a beautiful piece this week about how when he speaks as a Palestinian from Gaza in universities in America, how people can't hear his message because he talks about his family that's been killed by Israeli airstrikes. And then he talks about October 7th. And people they literally can't hold both. The people who are in the room. And so if it's hard in our synagogues, it's so much harder in the campuses. They can't hear it. And I hear him and think, as long as there's Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib and there's Mo Husseini, and like we're finding voices of people, Palestinians and Israelis, who believe that there's a different kind of future. And that is obviously the only future, is one where there's a just peace and all people can live in dignity. So it's not the majority voice. He says that. He says, I'm a minority voice in my own community, but this is what I believe. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that you're right, that it's a minority voice in both communities. And also that voice is there, and that voice needs to grow, and we can help it grow. Okay. Oh, we have one more. Let's take one more question from Mark, and then maybe we'll close with the prayer.
I so admire what you're doing. I'm so glad you're here and sharing your Torah. But I wanted to kind of share an experience I had in Israel. I spent a year there in the late 90s, and I was inspired to be on a kibbutz and wanted to do the most difficult, arduous work on the kibbutz. So I was like harvesting bananas, which was like really grueling, difficult work. And it was like me and another American Jewish volunteer and a British Jewish volunteer, and the two like most effective workers were these Thai migrant workers who have no conceptualization of being equal citizens there. And the guy who supervised us and made it really run was like an Israeli Arab who was essentially a second-class citizen, and hard to imagine being otherwise. And like, this is a kibbutz, like the people who founded it in the 1930s. This can't have been the vision that they had, but maybe it wasn't inevitable, but it's kind of predictable that this is sort of what things would look like. And making it otherwise seems like it would be really, really difficult to do. It's really sort of swimming against a current. And I guess I feel like part of me feels like what you're doing, do you feel like you're swimming against a current? And can you talk about that a little bit and how that affects how you think about things? And thank you again.
Listen, I want to say, I think every human being who, for a whole lifetime, not only at the age of 20, but for a whole lifetime, believes in shared society and equality, is willing to pay prices for that, to give up on some of his privileges. I think that person will always be a minority. I think in a way we have seen America in a very unlikely time for history. Most of history is now. You are witnessing how most history looks like. Most of history looks like people like Trump and Bibi. People who are strong, powerful, they don't care about one person. They will hurt. They will not defend. They will use hate and the mob against each other. That's what they do. You have witnessed an America that is exceptional and is an exception of history. That makes you very vulnerable because you're going to find out that you're so heartbroken. But it also makes you very strong because you saw something that most humans did not see ever in their life. Most humans do not live the way you do. They don't have food, or the way I do. They don't have food, they don't have equality, they don't have rights. That's most of humanity, not only Israel. So the question is, what is our role in this moment? And how come so many humans can live when something wrong is happening next to them? How come? How come so many humans can live when a woman is battered next to them, when someone is poor next to them, when someone was just kicked out of his job because of something next to them? Most of humanity does that all the time. So we need to understand how we're going to be resilient for the rest of our life. This will happen in Israel. Of course it happens in Israel like in any other place. By the way, that is the biggest price Jews are paying for Zionism. The biggest price that Jews are paying for Zionism is that we became normal. We have a country where people could say, this is only, it happens in my neighborhood, but I can just not look to this side, look to this side, and disregard this woman, or disregard that poor person, or disregard the Palestinian, or disregard the Thai. It happens in America. It happens everywhere. So I don't think bashing Israel for being that place is the right thing. It happens everywhere. We have to ask the question, why is it happening? How come people can live like that? How come I can live like that? How come? And how can we convince people without making them feel that they're little, that they're not human, not ethical? Because that will not make them grow. When we tell a person, how dare you, that doesn't make him grow. So we are in a very complicated situation because we're witnessing apathy. We're witnessing indifference, which is actually cruelty. And we ask ourselves, how will we oppose that without being cruel and apathetic to that person? I don't know the answer, but the only answer I have, it will not happen anymore through the high courts like it did in America. It's the end of it. It will happen through society and through communities who show that every day. They will take upon themselves to show that every day. So we want to be saved by the Supreme Court and by, law. I'm not sure this will happen in our lifetime again. I hope so, but I'm not sure. And I think the best way will be to create communities who just live in a different way. And they love enough to show it. And we will need a lot of patience, because this is going to be suffering. We will suffer. And everywhere, Israel, as Jews, you'll come to Israel, you'll suffer. As Jews in America, you'll suffer in America. but it won't help the world if you suffer all day. And also if we're angry all day. That's why it takes a long time. And I want to answer, Jack, I understand now better. This is going to be long and difficult. You can't fix it all at one time because there are so many pains on the way. And you have to heal it. It's like having someone in the, in the emergency room, and he's all broken. His head, his bones, his legs, everything. You won't be able to fix the whole thing. You'll have to start with the heart or with the mind and make sure that these people can breathe and they still have a pulse. And then slowly it will move to other things. We won't be able to fix everything at one time. It will not happen. Mm-hmm. If you need to love Israel after it's all fixed, you'll need a lot of patience. Mamash. But this is not only about Israel. Israel is part of a sickness that we are now hurting because we are seeing our own tradition, which is a tradition that stands against apathy. We are seeing it becoming a state that is able to hold that apathy in the name of our tradition. But I will not let that make me less Zionist. Because I truly believe that the state of Israel has a job in history. Like Jews have a job here in America alongside Christians and Muslims. And that job is to create sensitive humanity. So in war, sensitivity is not appreciated. You're sensitive. You need to be Rambo. You need to be a macho. But you'll see soon, at the end of this stage, what people will appreciate the most, the soldiers coming back from Gaza, the Palestinians, people who lost their jobs, so many people, they will appreciate the force and the strength of sensitivity. And we will need to be the teachers of that without being too outraged, so we can teach it. And that's the last thing I want to say. Jews have been suffering in history from so much barbarism and terrorism of the world. And yet, we were able to hold on to being teachers of love and hope and universalism. We have to be able to do that within and to do that outside. And doing it outside, not within, or within, not outside, it's not going to be what we need to be right now. So we are needed now in the emergency room for a long time. And we will need to love our people with patience and love the world with patience. And this is actually the song, if it's okay to see it. So this is the song that I brought you. It's a beautiful poem written by Shirley Tzfat Davidai. And she wrote a poem that I think is beautiful. And I think it's really for this moment. But maybe I'll read it in Hebrew and you in English, or we can do the opposite. Yeah? Me the English? Me the... Okay. אהבה רבה זה עלינו. אנחנו נהיה חייבים לאהוב. לחפש חמלה גדולה על כולם ועלינו. בבקשה שנרחם עלינו. וניתן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל, לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, לחדש ולקיים את כל דברי תלמודנו באהבה. ויאירו עינינו בתורתנו. ונדבק במצוות ליבנו, ולא נבוש, ולא נקלם לעולם ועד, כי בנו בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתנו, כי פועלי ישועות אנחנו, כן, אנחנו. לא מרוממים, ולא נבחרים, פשוט עם חפץ חיים, שעליו ללמוד מחדש לאהוב. ברוכים נהיה אנחנו ישראל, על שנבחר כל יום באהבה.
To love, this is upon us. We must love. To seek great compassion for everyone and for ourselves. Please, please, may we have mercy on ourselves. And give our hearts to understand and comprehend, to hear, to learn, and to teach, to preserve and to do, to renew and to fulfill all the words of our learning with love. And may our eyes be illuminated by our Torah, and may our hearts cling to the commandments, and we shall not be ashamed nor humiliated forever, for in ourselves we have trusted. We will rejoice and be glad in our salvation, for we are the workers of salvation. Yes, we are. Not exalted and not chosen, simply a people desiring life who must learn anew to love. Blessed shall we be, Israel, for choosing every day with love. I'm going to just ask if we can rise for a moment, and we'll close this beautiful conversation with one more prayer, which is the prayer that Rabbi Tamar wrote with Sheikha Ibtisam, the words of the prayer of the mothers for life and peace. And, you spoke about the relationship that you have been building for many years with these folks of different faiths. And you wrote this before October 7th. And when we came together on October 9th after Yantif, and the next day we came together, and this was the liturgy of our grief, of our anguish. And it was true for so many communities around the country. And it's like you planted the seed like before we even knew how much we needed it. So I really say this with incredible gratitude to you and to Rabbi Neria and to all of your beloved colleagues and family and friends. Thank you. Thank you for holding of hope and the light of peace for us. And we are right here by your side from across the ocean, but holding you with love and with strength. So I think maybe we'll do the Hebrew and English again. Do you want to read the Hebrew part or no? Okay.
I'll just say about my sister teacher, Ibtisam, who is an incredible human being. And last Chanukah, Neria had a beautiful idea, and we sang a song in a very dark black tent with Achinoam Nini. And we invited her to sing together a beautiful song of hers, which is to light one candle, each one candle. And we invited Sheikha Ibtisam to come. And I said to her, I don't want you to be, in any trouble. We're just going to talk about hostages. And then she took the microphone and she said, no, Tamar. She said, we will do this for the hostages. We will do this for the soldiers. We will do this for the Israelis. We will do this for the Palestinians. We will do this for everyone. So I just want to honor the presence of this incredible woman in our world, Sheikha Ibtisam from Furadis, next to Zichron Yaakov. And may she have a good, long life. And may she and all our Palestinian, Muslim, Israeli leaders, whoever they are and what they choose to do, may they all be safe and listened to. And may you have the honor of having them in your lunch and learn sometime.
Amen. Amen.
מלך חפץ בחיים, הרופא לשבורי לב ומחבש לעצבותם. שמענה תפילת אמהות, שאתה לא בראתנו על מנת שנהרוג זה בזה, ולא על מנת שנחיה בפחד, כעס ושנאה בעולמך, אלא על מנת שנדע לתת רשות זה לזה לקיים את שמך, שם חיים, שם שלום בעולם. על אלה אני בוכייה, איני יורדה מים. על ילדים בוכים מפחד בלילות. על הורים אוחזים עולליהם וייאוש ואפלה בליבם. על שער אשר נסגר ומי יקום ויפתחהו, טרם פנה יום. ובדמעות ובתפילות שאני מתפללת כל הזמן, ובדמעות כל הנשים שכואבות את הכאב החזק בזמן הקשה כל כך הזה, הריני מרימה את ידיי למעלה. אנא ממך, אדוני, רחם עלינו. שמע קולנו, אדוני אלוהינו, בימי הרעה האלה, שלא נתייאש, ונראה חיים זה בזה, ונרחם זה על זה, ונצטער זה על זה, ונקווה זה לזה. כי אתה שלום, וביתך שלום, וכל אשר לך שלום. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
God of life, who heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, may it be your will to hear the prayer of the mothers, for you did not create us to kill each other, nor to live in fear, anger, or hatred in your world, but rather you have created us so that we can grant permission to one another to sanctify your name of life, your name of peace in this world. For these things I weep, my eye runs down with water, for our children crying at night, for parents holding their children with despair and darkness in their hearts, for a gate that is closing, and who will open it while the day has not yet dawned? and with my tears and prayers which I pray, and with the tears of all women who deeply feel the pain of these difficult days, I raise my hands to you. Please, God, have mercy on us. Hear our prayer that we shall not despair, that we shall see life in each other, that we shall have mercy for each other, that we shall have pity on each other, that we shall hope for each other. We say, Amen.
Amen.
Toda,
תודה רבה.
toda, toda. Shabbat shalom.